Yep. So officially, hello, hello, hello. It's our 16th meetup. Today we have amazing speaker Kate Hobler. Kate, am I mistaken? Are you one of the first professional Scrum trainers accredited by Scrum.org from Poland?
Yeah, I think I was actually the third from Poland, but I believe I was the 11th overall.
Wow. So you see who's our guest over here. So Kate is a true pioneer, and Kate is one of the most famous and well-known Scrum practitioners here in Poland. And we are very lucky to have Kate over here. As a person who lives in Poland, I've heard only urban legends about Kate and what Kate does into an organization. So it's an absolute pleasure. All of those legends were good. Mine are bad. Yours are good. Yeah.
I don't believe yours are bad, but we'll settle that afterwards.
Yeah. So before we give the mic to Kate, Artem and I were gonna tell you shortly about what our initiative is all about, and then we'll invite Kate to share her wisdom and knowledge with us.
Yeah.
Artem.
So I'll start. I'll try to do it careful and fast this time. So yeah, we call the initiative Agile with Ukraine because we have three main directions of what we are doing. When the work has been started, I'm locally right now in Ukraine, Andrei is in Poland, but we are both Ukrainians. We want somehow to contribute, and as a not most promising soldiers, we are much better as agile coaches and scrum trainers. So we decide that we can connect people who have a lot of experience and nice cases, tools, practices, ideas, inspiration to share with those who want to learn from the best around the globe. And we've started immediately after, like 3 days after it was first discussed, we launched the first event, and now it's number 16. Yeah, and another purpose is to raise awareness about what's going on here in Ukraine, and it's what I'm planning to do right now. Because it's not some small local conflict, it's a real war, and it's not war for like dignity of Ukrainians or Ukrainian language or independence of the country. It's a war between good and evil. It's a war against pure evil who are killing innocent people, elder people, women, children, raping civil populations. So it's absolutely unbelievable in nowadays, but it's happening. And we want to raise awareness about it. And also the third goal, of course, is to collect some donations so we can help also with finance to army, to volunteers, with medical help, with some defense military support and so on. And what's going on here? Presentation wasn't updated from Friday, so for those who've been with us on Friday, no new pictures yet because nothing good to add yet. But I hope that from next meetup we will start adding some pictures of our local wins also. Andrei, you want to say something?
I wanted to say that that's also a good thing.
Yeah,
that
sometimes
new pictures.
When we don't have big ruins on new pictures, it's also a good thing. Yeah, thank you. So, what up? This Kramatorsk, 8th of April, it's the last biggest crime from their side, latest, and hopefully last. It is a railway station with 4,000 people are waiting for evacuation. Day before it was agreed a green corridor, which means people can be evacuated through railway using trains, and they launched a big missile with words for children on it. We don't know why so, but yeah, more than 50 dead people, and also more than 100 people are in clinics. Some of them needed surgery and many losses. And yeah, that's why this is the reason why we want to show these pictures, because the media sometimes focusing on different topics to switch attention from what's going on in Ukraine, and we still want to show what is really going on here, so you can spread it also with your network after to explain that it's not stopped yet, and the only central Ukraine is now not in the active phase, but in eastern part of Ukraine it's totally like crappy situation. And this is Kharkiv city center. central square, biggest square in the Europe. It's fully ruined. It's Chernigiv, one of the oldest cities of Ukraine. Also ruined on 70%, according to the mayor feedback and interview. This is Sumy. Also, you can see Mariupol, where more than half of population were Russian-speaking people, and Russia says that they come here to protect Russian-speaking people. That's the way how they are protecting civilian population, as you can see. And this is Kiev. Without declaring a war, on second or third day of the war, they've launched missiles to civil residential building just a few kilometers from city center. So when they start this war, they say that it will be just missiles to army troops or to some navy place or some other military objects, but as you can see, it's not only about military objects. This is the world's largest transport aircraft, Maria, before and after, also ruined. This is the owner and winner of Golden Ball in 1986, Igor Belanov, and he was the best European football player, and now he's protecting Kiev together with territorial defense. So you can see how this war changed the lives of very talented sports people, famous people around the globe also. They need just to take a weapon and go to protect their country. This is one of the biggest European shopping mall, opened just 1 year ago, and now it's almost fully ruined, and it's nearby the house, the building where I bought a flat for my grandma, and she was evacuated just 2 days before the missile was hitting this shopping mall. This is one of the newest business center in the Kiev, also a few kilometers from Maidan Nezalezhnosti, from city center, Lukyanevska station. Also just opened and now almost fully ruined by missiles. Not looks like a military object, but for Russians, everything which is in Ukrainian ground is military objects probably. This is a residential district, new residential district in Chernigiv. Also people just finished renovations maybe, and now it looks like this. Now you can hear also my children. They are in safe place, but there are lack of entertainment for them, so they found what they can, and it's okay. This is Bucha. I've heard a lot about Bucha, I believe. If not, you can Google. If you will Google, you will see these pictures. Not very pleasant to view, but Russian Google, called Yandex, the most popular search engine, for last week were showing these pictures. Now they finally switched to up-to-date pictures, but before they were showing like everything is okay. We like in this city, it's peaceful for civilian people, blah blah. So propaganda is working very nice, not only on Russia territory but also in European media. So be careful with news. Double check all the fakes with different sources, please. This is another city, Borodyanka, next to Bucha. As you can see now, they have very interesting building in the city, and half of the buildings look like this one. Also just a residential building with many flats for families. And now they look like this. And this is Zahar, the boy, 11 years old, originally from Bucha, now is hiding in western part of Ukraine and dreaming about spend the summer somewhere in Netherlands in camp to learn how to draw. And we are trying to organize this for him right now. And what he's seen at the first day of the war, he has seen how this Maria aircraft was ruined, and he drew this picture how Ukrainian soldiers should push out Russians from our territory. And this is a part of my another initiative, social initiative, UA Kids Today, where you can find a lot of different drawings by Ukrainian kids hiding and running from war. This is Dobro Park pictures, big open air park nearby Kiev, and this is my daughter. She's looking on residential of Santa Claus this January 27th or 30th of January, and that's how it looks right now. So from this building they created more Russian landscape, so to say, because they're not used to see normal civilization. They used to make some Russian transformation to usual landscape for them. And this is Ukrainian people. They're going back to Irpin, to near Bucha, another city which was almost ruined, and they're helping local administration and soldiers to clean up the streets so they can faster switch back to normal way of life, at least how it's possible right now. And also I want to share with you Ukrainian software developers, engineers, who are continuously delivering value to their customers, sitting in shelters, but they continue to work and create software. So nothing will stop Ukraine from the win. Nothing will stop us from deliver what we were committed to. And we are hoping that soon we will be like going back to normal life and evil will be punished. Thank you for attention. War is not so far, but we will stop this war here on our territory quite soon. And to make it happen, we are asking you to donate, and we're collaborating with Uniters Foundation. Andriy will tell you more about Uniters Foundation, and I will save your ears from this sound around me.
Thanks, Artem. So, yep, when we started the initiative, we were like thinking, what can we do and with whom can we cooperate? Because we have like absolutely zero experience in fundraising or buying a lot of stuff. There are people who can do it better. And since 2014, when the Russian aggression first started with the annexion of Crimea and war in Donbass, a group of people from Ukraine who live here in Warsaw, Poland, they set up the small foundation, which for 8 years was growing, and now it's one of the biggest foundations here in Warsaw, Poland, that is set up by Ukrainian people, and they are super effective and super fast into delivering help to Ukraine. So just think of the numbers. Since the war started, the first cargo that left from Warsaw to Ukraine from this foundation was on 26th of February, so less than 2 days after the war started. And since that day, they delivered more than 3,050 tons of help to Ukraine. And they're delivering everything possibly can and needed, starting from humanitarian help with food or other humanitarian stuff like clothes, even Pampers or other things, and ending up with medicine, tactical equipment needed for our warriors over there. So from the start of the foundation, we have raised more already with our initiative, more than $33,000. And if you are fans of CICD, so this is one of the best CICDs I've ever seen in my life. And this is one of the fastest ways how you can help Ukraine, by donating to Uniters Foundation. There are a couple of ways how you can donate. It's via the bank transfer, and all of the information will be in the chat. But two easiest ones are via Polish website zrzutka.pl, where you can transparently see how much has been raised by that website, or also for people who are not in Poland, we have set up a PayPal account over there, so you can donate over there. So one of the most needed things right now for Ukraine to keep fighting is to continuously supporting Ukraine, and especially financially. So thanks a lot for your attention. Please donate, and let's give the floor to Kate to some awesome content over there.
All right, thanks so much. Actually, it gave me a lot of material to work on with that introduction. So that's actually pretty awesome. All right, so I actually do have a presentation, and I am going to go through the slides. But if you need to choose whether to look at people or to look at slides, choose people. Slides are not that important. Slides are there just to illustrate what I'm going to be talking about. Yeah? So if you need to choose people. And hopefully we are going to have some interesting information and a good laugh. That was my objective, because humor is also part of the culture that I will be talking about, yeah, and value systems of President Zelensky and all of the Ukrainians that are visible in the media. All right, so just a little introduction. Hi, I'm Kate, and you can just call me Kate. If you are Polish, you can also call me Kasia, but I I'm so used to being called Kate. Is my husband also calls me that, and my brother calls me that, and my stepson calls me that. Then if you just see me on the street, and if you ask Kasia, I might not turn around. So yeah, that's about that. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's be talking. Wait, 1 second. And my beautiful hierarchy of windows just fell apart. All right. You know how it is. All right. So leadership styles in times of war. There's Putin and there's Zelensky. So let's take a deeper dive. So first is the man, the meme. He used to be so freakishly popular on the internet. And not only, he was, even though feared, he was also respected. He was made into multiple, actually pretty majestic pictures, because the picture when he's riding a bear, we have to say it is pretty majestic, yeah, regardless of the person sitting on top. Heck, even him riding a cookie, or actually a cracker, looked pretty, let's say, badass. Yeah? Now we know it's not that, but it still looks like that. And him riding a llama in space, actually that's in the podcast, sorry. Yeah, that was also it. The whole world was making fun, but generally making fun in a way that he's actually pretty dangerous, right? Like that you funny guy, I'll kill you last. But it was still funny because nobody thought that this would actually be made into a real threat. Everybody thought that it's impossible, apart from some small things happening, that the second biggest, or the second biggest army in the world, and the leader of that army is somebody to be respected, right? And when you see somebody like this talking about the glory of the Soviet Union, it is respectable, I have to say. And the other guy that we're talking about is slightly different. Is the guy who voiced Paddington the Bear, is the guy who actually played a president in a show, right? He's an actor. He danced with the stars. He was a comedian, right? And what's interesting is that he played the president. He played the president who was a real servant for the people. And here comes one of the smartest moves in political history that I have ever heard about. Because this guy has been regarded as someone who will be a good politician. So he used it to turn it into truth, into reality. Yeah? He basically, during his campaign, that series was aired multiple times. And because of that, people started associating him with someone who's actually able to lead a country. And that paid off. He became the president. There were voices, I still remember, like, I don't know, on Reddit or 9gag, I still remember the voices saying, oh my God, our president, a comedian became our president. How can that be? Yeah. How did that happen? And nobody realized at that time what that meant. Because then the war happened. Let's take a closer look at how these two gentlemen behave, or maybe one. Let's not dive that deep. During the time of war. So during the time when somebody's life is at stake, because both of those lives are at stake. right? It's both the Putin that has bounties on his head, and probably summing up to somewhere around what Elon Musk is making in a year. And Zelensky also is that there are multiple services that are trying to get him killed. But during the war, this is what happened to Putin. That powerful, feared man started fleeing. He started sitting away no less, I think, that 25 meters away from the nearest person, apart from some special people who are designed to like give him food or something like this. Nobody knows where he's hiding. And nobody knows if he actually really is leading the country or whether he's kept in the dark of what's happening. People are trying to show that he's actually working or he's actually leading the country by green screening him into a conference. That's at least weird. Let's look at the comedian. What does he do? He's there in the trenches saying, I need ammo, not a ride. Right? He's leading the country. He's creating an environment in which people, even though they are threatened, they are being killed, they are being slaughtered, actually, they're still willing to fight. And he has over 90% of people that would stand behind him. How come? How is it possible? Why those two people are so different? First, let's take a look at a very interesting coping mechanism that happens inside the Ukrainian nation. There is this pretty interesting blog post. I have not managed to get a follow-up. Maybe there is one, but I haven't, because I cannot read Ukrainian. I am unable to search through the Ukrainian internet, but maybe you will be able to find it. But it says, there's an introduction. It says, when we win, and we will have to make a comedy about this war. Yes, it will be a black comedy that the whole world will see. And let me tell you what it says. It's going to be a comedy about a grandmother who presses sunflower seeds into the pockets of the occupants because when the Russian dies and rots, at least something good will grow. About the hoodlums from a block of flats near Kiev who captured an enemy armored car and beat up the crew for entering their neighborhood. About the gypsies who stole the tank from the Russians. About a homeless people who collected beer bottles for Molotov cocktails. About grandmothers who searched for enemy markings and obliterated all the signs left by saboteurs in the area. And about the Russian soldiers whom a Ukrainian grandmother welcomed with tea and powder for diarrhea, and then burned them in the backyard privy like Princess Olga. And about a simple Ukrainian uncle who, with a cigarette in his teeth, carried a mine from the road to the forest. And about how a sabotage unit climbed inside the trucks of a hypermarket in order to get through the city like a Trojan horse. But someone gave them a tip and the commandos in the trucks were barbecued. And about the two idiots who came straight to the Ukrainian police station in Kharkiv region and asked for oil to refuel their tank because they had run out and were very, very surprised that they were immediately arrested. And about the landing of Russian paratroopers based on old maps. They landed where there was supposed to be a forest, but they found themselves on a bare field and were immediately shot at. And about a group of tanks near Kharkiv that ran out of fuel and local hunters shot the crews fleeing into the woods with shotguns. And about a landing craft that landed in the water just off the shore of the Black Sea at 0 degrees centigrade. Territorial defenses were waiting on the shore to shoot, but the uninvited guests drowned themselves in cold water before they had the chance. And like the enemy tank shot down its own helicopter, and how a looter was caught in Nikolaev and was tied with no pants to a column, and the police car that arrived on call fired its headlights, illuminating how the locust slapped his behind. And how the owner of a safari travel agency in Zanzibar donated contributions from Russian clients to help the Ukrainian army and then landed them those receipts. And how simple villager Grandpa Tola stole a BMP by hooking it up to his tractor. And how an enemy plane crashed in Zolotonosha, and people from all over the village grabbed the pilot and literally tore him apart with their bare hands. And about how Georgians refused to refuel a Russian ship and offered to use paddles. And how the whole world repeated Russian worship, go F yourself. And that's only from the first 5 days. So a question, because we can actually talk. There isn't, I love the fact that we're on Zoom. Why do you think that happened? Why do you think so many people jumped at the first signs of war, jumped and helped however they could?
Hi, Bartek. Maybe they were aware of the fact that this is the only way to survive. And I also think that they were really well prepared and aware that it's coming. And it was not a surprise for them, because for the last years, I think that they could observe, even though there is propaganda, still, I think we're quite aware. Thank you.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There are also 2 comments on the chat. What choice do we have? And to represent freedom. Yeah, that's true. But at first, Russians weren't really aiming that much at civilians, and at least in the first few days. That happened, that changed later. Yeah? That changed big time later. But still, everybody was involved in that war. And that was actually because of the leadership and how the 2 leaders approached the war. One side was misinformed, and one side was missing a lot of opportunities. One side was actually had pretty low morale, and the other was exactly the opposite. Even though before the war, there were actually many people who were not really sure whether they are Russians or Ukrainians. That changed. That changed big time. Because during the war, they needed to take a side, and almost all of them took the blue and yellow one. So the Russian army found themselves in a very, very, very tough situation. Yeah? So what I wanted to introduce you to right now is there are actually 2 models that are able to, at least in part, explain what is happening and what possibly will be also happening in the future. One of them is called spiral dynamics. Anybody heard about it?
Yep.
All right. So let me introduce you to the tiers, so-called tiers, value system tiers, or V-memes in that system. And after that, I'm going to show you what is visible on there regarding both armies. So the spiral dynamics is basically a model that shows how humanity evolves and what value systems, so what we believe is good, or what we believe is something that we should pursue, evolves over time. So this is something that's tracked into the very ancient times when people were just started being a species. So this is how far it dates, how far back it dates. And it goes until actually even the future, because there are systems that have not been invented yet, or have not been observed yet, because maybe there are there, but they have not been observed yet. So this is a system that that grows as the humanity does. So let's take a look. The most ancient of the value systems is something called the beige. Actually, they are colored very similarly to what Frederick Laloux did in his book, talking about the teal system. It's actually based on spiral dynamics. So what beige is a situation where there is a single person, or there are actually single people who are trying to survive in an uninviting world. You can see that in those two movies, at least in those two movies. You might come up with other ones. So in I Am Legend or The Revenant, this is me versus the world. And that's beige. I'm just trying to survive. I'm going to do anything to survive. That's it. The second tier is something called purple, and it's when humanity started living, actually, they ditched living individually. They started forming families. They started forming small groups, living in a world that they did not understand, especially on a scientific level. So they believed that there is this weird world around them, and there are lots of spirits around them, and they need to work with those spirits. They need to make them happy. And you can see this, for example, in Brave, when there's this world that's full of spirits, and it's the family or the clan that comes together, and that's how they feel safe. It's actually also the same in Toy Story, because the human world is full of wonders, and they only can rely on themselves. They cannot go to the big spirits, which are people. So this is purple. So this is I feel safe in a family. And then we go into something that's visible a lot in organizations. That's red. Red is the value system where the strong prevails. So in the Game of Thrones, that was exactly it, right? The stronger you were, the easier it was for you to get power or be successful. In Breaking Bad, the same. The more brutal you became, the better actually you were doing. So that's red. Another one is blue, and blue is where red was not sufficient enough. So for example, because if you rule by force, then that force, this is limited. So at one time, you want to rule more than just the people that can see that you are strong, but you want to rule people who are, you want to rule more people. So you want to create empires. You want to create structures. You want to create hierarchies. You want to create good and evil, because you're doing something for the good and you're doing something for the evil. You can see this especially beautifully in the world of Elysium. And also, if you are a fan of Brandon Sanderson, just like me, you can find it very nicely in the Elantris. This is the hierarchy prevails. And after that, the humanity evolved into something called an orange. So this is where competence or resources is something to be valued. Because in the hierarchy, what is happening is that even if there is a stupid person on top of the hierarchy, or somebody that does not know how to rule or is not a specialist, they're still on the top. So this is where the revolutions started coming in, and people who were able to accumulate more wealth, or were able to do things better than the others, We're the ones that were successful. That's orange. Just like MacGyver or any form of like a fighting manga. So any form of shonen is also part of that. Another tier is green. This is collaboration, because at a point, people notice that, okay, individual skill is very cool, but we actually need a team. We need somebody to support. We need somebody to rely on. And even if we have a protagonist, just like in Avatar, The Last Airbender, there's still a team that's supporting them, and they're still supporting each other. And with the A team, everybody's the protagonist, right? That's the team, yeah? Because we're working together and we're not feeling left out. But then there's actually something, yeah, that's true. Avatar is a great series. If you haven't seen it, just go and do it. After green, what comes is yellow. The yellow value system is something that transcends only the teams. This is where both the individual and the team plays a big role. And people are not only supporting themselves, but they're actually supporting the they're supporting the balance in their environment. Master Oogway in Kung Fu Panda, he does that. Even though the war is coming, he is still very he's still somebody that you can rely on. Yeah, he's still somebody that you can go back to, because he is going to lead you regardless of whether there's war or peace. Also, something interesting like that happens in K-Pax, and I do recommend books a little more than movies, even though the movie is actually pretty awesome. When we transcend yellow, so it's not only us and the environment trying to get together, there's something called the turquoise. The turquoise is the value system that's actually very advanced and is happening in not very many places or situations or companies, because it's how to say it, it is futuristic. So you can see this types of value systems in Star Trek or in The Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card. This is where the society actually stops being a society we know. Yeah, it's somewhere where people can be themselves, but also work for the society. It's all interconnected. It's all holistic. Sometimes it sounds like a new age gibberish, but it's actually the next step we as a humanity are going to take. There's also one more, it's called Coral, but nobody knows what it is yet, because nobody has observed it yet. No? So now I actually have a task for you, because I have summed up those value systems, and I'm going to, and I know that this table looks pretty intimidating, but it's going to be easy once I explain it, what it is. There are actually 7 of 8 value systems. I omitted the beige, so the first one, deliberately, because we're not talking about individuals here. We're talking about large systems. So I'm curious, how would you assess which colors do Russians seem to have at the moment, and which colors do Ukrainians seem to have at the moment? If you cannot decide which one color do they have, you can choose more than one. So if you're interested, so you can go ahead and put it in the chat, or you can just talk about this. But let me first explain a little bit about this table. This table is basically an essence of this model of spiral dynamics. And so, for example, in purple, you have the magical and animistic worldview, and it's focused on us. So it's a focus on a group. The group makes sense here. what's the environment? And the environment is physical and spiritual worlds that overlap. How decisions are being made. Custom, due to custom and tradition. And how is education made? It's paternalistic teachers. Yeah? And again, in red, egocentric, impulsive, focus is on me, because me as a leader, I prevail. It's not us, it's me. I prevail. And the environment is the jungle. Decisions are made by the tough one. And education is a tough love. So take a closer look. Let's give us maybe 2 to 3 minutes to go through this and try to see, what do Russians represent? What would you say? And what do Ukrainians represent? And in the end, I'll tell you what I think and why I think that. Okay? So just 2 minutes, take a look. All right, we have a lot of voices, but looks like they oscillate around the same color. So it looks like there's a majority, there's a prevalent red in Russians. And there is something around the green for Ukrainians. And I would say that's also, that's very close to how I assess it, but it's just my opinion. It might not be true, because I would have to go much deeper into the subject, because I was thinking about red and blue for Russians and yellow and green for Ukrainians. And I see that many of you actually are on the same page here.
I believe
also,
we didn't.
Yeah.
I believe we didn't put blue a lot into Russian, because it's written over there: "Punish evil, reward good." It's the opposite over here, over there,
Mm-hmm. That's true, but this is how their propaganda works. Is their propaganda is
I was making a joke.
You as evil. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't get it. Yeah. And what's interesting is that you mentioned that before the war, it was a little more orange in Ukraine, and actually started facilitating going forward. And that's interesting, because you need a facilitator for going forward. Yeah, there has to be someone who pushes that growth, yeah, in a society. And what would you say? What was Russia before the war? Was it also red, or was it something else? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was also just yeah, that's true. Super red in the 90s. That was even their colors. Yeah. And because look, blue is very authoritarian. Blue is very hierarchical. And what happened is that during the war, those hierarchies started crumbling because orders from authority started being viewed as not optimal, suboptimal. Yeah, we were supposed to punish evil and reward good, but there's something wrong with that. So what happened? They regressed into red. Yeah? So the divide between the value systems of Russians and Ukrainians right now spans across at least 3, if not 4 value systems. This is a leap of 400 years at least, if it comes to the development of society. And how is that created? How is that done? Actually, the crucial element here in how the value systems are being created or how they are facilitated forward or backwards is the creation or actually or construction of the environment. Because you can see that in currently what happens during the war for Russians, it's the jungle, right? The tough and strong prevail. You can see by the brutalization of the forces. At first, they tried to wage a clean war, right? They wanted to have a clean strike in 3 days, or at least that's what they say. Yeah? But that didn't happen. They were unable to do that. So what happens then? It's actually lots of stress kicks in. And because the blue, the authoritarian value system, already has that brutality a little tamed, but it's still there, regressing into red is very, very easy. Looking at the other side, a country who is trying to develop themselves, and we're on the brink of that huge development. They have already come a long, long way, right? But it was on the brink of that leaping forward from orange to green and forward. What happened is actually the war facilitated that chaotic environment that changes the norm, and uncertainty drives learning. That's the yellow one. So there is this drive towards the yellow. So that's why Ukraine is going forward so quickly. No? Even in times of war, even what you guys were showing before, where the civilians are helping to clean the destroyed cities so that they can rebuild, they can go back to living normal lives. Yeah? And this is happening because Ukraine is giving out true information. They are not resorting to propaganda. Of course, they are talking about successes. There may be overestimated losses, yeah, on the Russian side, but nobody says they are not. Yeah, they're not trying to just make it look good. Yeah, they're admitting that they might be overestimated because some of the reports are coming in twice. That's normal. They're unable to confirm everything. Yeah? So that's why this is so different. And this is why the leaders have to create environments for value systems. Yeah? And what Putin did is he regressed that environment into brutalization on the Russian side. And Zelensky, by setting an example, pushed it forward towards yellow. It might not reach yellow, but it is pushed towards yellow. And that's what the society starts to develop, yeah? Into yellow, into something that's unpredictable, but we together as a nation can create something good out of it. Yeah. How does it sound? Does that make sense?
A lot of sense.
All right, thanks. All right, I'm actually going to leave the presentation. If somebody wants it, just go ahead and use it. That's not a problem. I'm just going to add my name to it. So if you want it, just let me know. I'll make it available. There is actually a second model that is also supporting that. And it's different. It's not about the whole value systems, but it's directly about power. So is any of you familiar with something called 5 forms of 5 bases of power, which are in fact 6? All right, thanks, Andrew. Yeah. So this is something that has been created by 2 gentlemen, Mr. French and Mr. Raven, in the 50s. It's actually a pretty big thing because this leapt the studies on power forward, and it was actually used to create some like tiers or systems for judging war crimes. So this might be something that will be used again soon. Let's hope so. So the 5 forms or bases of power, yep, are the first one and the most, actually there are 2 very primitive ones. They're very interconnected. First one is the rewarding power. The rewarding power is something, first, before I say into what's rewarding power, let's define power first. So what is power? Power is a special relationship between at least 2 people where one of them is fulfilling the wishes of another. So one person is subject of the power and the other holds the power. Yeah? And what's very important is that power cannot be taken. Power has to be granted. So if we have 2 people, one technically in power and the other that is the subject of that power, that subject of that power has to grant power over themselves. So that person needs to say, yes, I will grant your request, wish, yeah, whatever you need. And there are different forms of getting that power. One of them is rewarding. So for example, if you say, if you, for example, bring me coffee, I'm going to give you candy. That's rewarding power. And if that reward is enough for me, I'm going to bring that person a coffee, right? Because I want the candy. But there also, I might decide that it's not enough for me. And I'm not just going to do that. Simple as that. Yeah? So that's power. Power has to be granted. Power cannot be taken away. Let's even make an example of the most of a violent power. So, for example, somebody is putting a gun against your head and saying, "Do something," and you still have a choice whether to do it or not. That's why power has to be granted, not taken. Yeah? So the rewarding power is something that somebody wants to give you something in return for a favor. Yeah? So that's rewarding power. And rewarding power creates compliance. So basically, if there is a reward, if there is that carrot hanging, dangling, that's fine. I'm going to do something. That's it. Yeah. And that's it. Then there's coercive power. So it's the stick, right? If then that the rewarding was the carrot, the coercive is a stick. There's still compliance. It's still creating compliance, because if you are fearing the punishment, you will comply. Yeah? If the punishment is severe enough for you to comply. So that's the rewarding and coercive. And they're sometimes viewed as 2 types of the same power. Yeah, but because there are psychologically, they are different. That's why they are separated, but usually they come together. Another form of power is a legitimate power. And a legitimate power is creating submission. So that's actually that's a form of long-lasting compliance. A legitimate power is the power of somebody that in a society or in a hierarchy or in a structure is placed above you. So someone, for example, police has legitimate power. For example, a king might have legitimate power. A president might have legitimate power. A parent might have a legitimate power. Yeah. And that power creates submission. If you decide to use it and say, hey, I am your boss, the other will submit. Another form of power is the expert power. That one is a little different because that one creates respect. Yeah. How can you tell? Because an expert power is that you trust someone so that that person is going to, you trust that person because that person is more experienced or knows more than you, yeah, or is at least an expert of that you can see that is an expert. A very common example in life: if you go to a doctor and you believe that this is a good doctor, that they're a good expert, then you are going to do whatever the doctor says you should do in order to get rid of whatever you might have, an illness or whatnot. But if you don't believe this is a good doctor, you're probably going to consult Uncle Google. Yeah? So there's not much respect involved. So that's the expert power. So if somebody is an expert, ask Jeeves, yeah. Another form of power is reverent power. That creates engagement. The reverent power is that natural leadership, yeah? So that charisma, so that you choose to follow that person because you believe they're going to lead you into a brighter future, or lead you out of trouble, or lead you into something interesting or exciting or whatnot. This is what creates engagement. This is the form of power that if you have and if you use it, you're going to have people follow you. Trust in experts was a bit challenged today. What do you mean? They might not be experts, though. All right, go ahead and write it down, and I'll in the meantime I will follow. So these are the 5 forms of power that have been originally introduced by gentlemen's French and Raven, but there is a 6th one that has been added afterwards, and it's informational power. The power to withhold information, release information, create informational white noise and stuff like this. So this is informational power. Some experts says that it's not a 6th form of power. It's a different form of the previous ones. But it is regarded as that there is actually a 6th form of power, which is the informational power. So question again, what do you think? Which powers, even regardless of whether they have them or not, which powers do Putin and Zelensky exhibit? Yeah, they might have more, but which ones they are actually using? I'm curious, how do you assess that?
Can you show once again previous slides to revise?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So there's rewarding. So I'm going to give you a reward in order to get your submission, or actually compliance. There's coercive. So again, compliance by trying to punish you. Then legitimate. So I am your boss, or I am your father, mother, or I am your president, or who is not. And you are going to be submissive. And I am an expert, so I know a lot, so you can respect me. Or I am a leader. I have the referent power. I am a charismatic leader, and that's how I create engagement. And I have informational power, so I have the power to withhold, release information. I gain influence by doing that. Yeah? Oh, and Piotr, don't worry. And I mean, I didn't get a joke twice already today, so, but that's not that's not why you shouldn't do that. Go ahead, make practical jokes, please. Humor is one of the best tactics, yeah, in those types of grim situations.
I think David wrote that Zelensky expresses experts in many areas and Putin cursive. I would add that Putin actually displays informational power, a part of coercive. Yeah. I wouldn't say that Zelensky is expert though, but a guy. So he's very charismatic. So he's closer to me to reference.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't consider him an expert in a lot of fields. And that's also okay, because right now he doesn't stick his nose into the areas that he's not expert and does what's important. It's also important to know from which stuff you have to restrain yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, great.
Like,
go ahead.
Can the person like possess a couple of these powers, you know?
Yeah, there might be a person that possesses all of them.
Okay, so in my opinion, right, it was like legitimate for president of Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
probably legitimate and referent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely what he exhibits. These two are very, very visible. Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Forgot about legitimate. But in Ukraine, I forgot about legitimate. But in Ukraine, when you say about legitimate, we have a meme about Yanukovych claiming he was legitimate.
He did have legitimate power.
Yeah, then he lost it.
Yeah, because you can lose legitimate power. That's true. You of course you can use any form of power. Yeah. Sometimes you might look like an expert, but then you open your mouth, right? That can also happen. You lose that expert power.
Or you dance near piano, fortepiano. It also can influence your authority for years and years.
That's also
by the way,
true.
By the way, years and years, I believe that we like living in this movie for last few years. If you haven't seen Years and Years, it's highly recommended.
Not yet, but
it's it's anti-utopia, absolutely crazy TV show.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that David just said, in what Andrew you were saying before, an expert is if you have an expert power, you don't have to be an expert in everything. You have to be an expert in something and be able to show that you were an expert in that. And if you're stepping aside, and then letting other experts do what they're experts in, that's actually a great example of a referent power. Yeah, because that's how we create engagements. And you can see that people who are, it's estimated that there has been from 50 to 100 attempts at Zelensky's life. How come none of them succeeded? This guy's out in the open. How is that possible? And that actually is part of that referent power and being able to get experts to help and be in the vicinity. Yeah, that's the power of the referent power, and also informational power too, because Ukrainian army and Ukrainian official Facebook and all of the social media, what's happening is that excuse me, they are releasing information that's not threatening to the troops, to the Ukrainian troops. Other information is withheld, but everybody knows why it's withheld. And this is the positive side of informational power. People who are not given information are aware why they are not given that information, because that might be a threat. Yeah, if the enemy got that information. Yeah? So by facilitating that and by showing that, Zelensky is creating an environment of trust, an environment of engagement around him. And all of these people, he actually can trust. And let's think back to Putin, who is sitting almost miles away from his closest people, helpers, minions, however we call them. But Zelensky is actually surrounded by people who are experts, who are engaged, who are informed in a way they can be informed. And that's why 50 to 100 attempts at his life has been neutralized in their infancy. Because that's the power of culture that he creates in an environment that has been partially staged by Russians, but he's using it perfectly to protect the people. And I guess that's it if it comes to the base from my side. And I would love to invite you to a further conversation. So if you have any other questions, if you have any other anything that you would like to add, maybe we can also think about how this can be translated into working with organizations, because it can be directly translated into working with organizations. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kate. I was waiting till this moment because I have one observation based on what you shared and one question. Sasha, please, not now. And the question is following. Can you show the slide with all the colors of spiral dynamic?
Sure.
Because when you've asked about Ukraine, where we are now, first I was thinking that maybe we are going from orange to green, but then I've rethink it once again and decided that from my current perspective, we were going from orange to green before war started, and now we're very, very inspired to go faster and switch to some green-yellow spectre, yeah? And what do you think? Maybe some ideas. What could be after the war? So the war will be finished. We will win somehow. And
yeah.
Do you believe that we will stay on this green-yellow spectre, or it will be a rollback?
As long as the leader is going to support it, is regardless of whether it's Zelensky or somebody else that follows him as a leader, if they're able to keep it up, then it's going to stay. The leader might also regress it, because if they show a different reality, if they start to kind of advertise different environment, you might also regress. Yeah, but right now it's on the best way, and I think that there is actually that's just my opinion. What is going to happen right after the war is that because Ukrainians got themselves known as very resilient and open and very trustworthy people from around the globe are going to be keen on investing in Ukraine. And because of that, they are going to support that transformation. Yeah, because Russians lost tons of business, but it's the Ukrainians that are going to get it right after the war, or actually even during the war, because maybe that's what's happening right now. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Because,
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. The whole world is kind of also rooting for the fact that all of the, Ukrainians will be able to sow all the seeds on the fields, right? Because half of the world is being fed by Ukraine. So this is actually pretty crucial there. And I think because of that, there is a high chance that yellow transformation into yellow is going to be supported as long as nothing happens to the leadership.
Interesting perspective, thank you. Why I'm asking, one of the theory which is now discussed inside Ukrainian society and communities, that President Zelensky is quite a selfish guy, and he was such before, and it was nicely observed by how he react to negative feedback or people who are not very supportive towards his words and statements. And because of being a big winner after this war, supported by the whole world, it could push him back to some me feeling instead of us. And it might be a pushback for the whole system. And as a consequences, we can observe the degradation of the specter. So what I wanted to share, and that's why this like interesting discussion for me. But I will give a space for others to join.
It actually is. It is possible, but then looking at, because you said that there was basically that run from orange to green already, I think that it's very unlikely to fall below the green. Yeah, of course there will be industries in which the orange environment is going to prevail, and there will be industries in which the green is going to prevail. But generally, I think that such a regression is going to be hard to be made, especially if Zelensky starts, if he regresses and if he starts speaking something else from what he did during the war, then he might lose credibility. Yeah. So I would think that this is too dangerous for him to pursue. Yeah. But it's just my opinion.
We have a question from Alona. In your opinion, what power does Scrum Master usually have in the organization?
I can jump in a little bit. I'm pretty sure that, at least in my world, and Arthur, it was just a joke. Never mind. Anyways, there is sort of a vision that Scrum Master does not have any legitimate power or anything, but then I think, depending from which point of view you're looking at, from the team point of view, from the, I don't know, C-level kind of point of view or something, it might change a little bit. The shades might be changing for the Scrum Master. Yeah. I wanted to ask for your opinion, and hope that clarifies a little bit my question.
Sure. I mean, I think that everybody can see that it's if it comes to the Scrum Master, it's the referent and expert power that every Scrum Master should have. If they don't have one or the other, they might not be a good Scrum Master. That might not be a good place for them. Yeah. If it comes to safe Scrum Master, that's something different. That's possibly more legitimate more than anything else. Maybe some rewarding and coercive as well, but I would say that depends on how screwed the implementation is. But going back to the legitimate power of the Scrum Master, that depends on how powerful a legitimate power is in a culture. There is a parameter of culture that's called power distance, and it's been created by Mr. Gerd Hofstede. And if you go into Hofstede Insights, there is this, actually, if you Google Hofstede country comparison, you're going to find a pretty interesting kind of cultural differences between countries. And one of them is called the power distance. So the power distance measures how big is legitimate power. So in cultures where the legitimate power is very big, so the power distance is very high, then Scrum Masters having legitimate power might override their referent and expert power. So that might be pretty dangerous to have them to have legitimate power at all. Yeah? So they shouldn't be team managers, for example. But there are cultures in which the power distance is very low. For example, in Scandinavia, it tends to be very low. And then, I mean, in Sweden, if you want to have a Scrum Master and a team leader, sure, go for it. That's not a problem, yeah, because that power distance is low. Yeah. So a Scrum Master might have legitimate power, but the question is what culture you're in and how big the power distance is. Yeah, and thanks, Arthur, for sharing the link. And go ahead.
Yep. Also agree that like it depends on the context you operate in, you work in the culture, and probably the question is what type of power Scrum Master won't possess in like near future. So probably when Scrum Master enters some like team, for example, with like situational leadership, probably you're all aware of. So at the starting point, Scrum Master can like tell or like something or delegate whatever, and or in like some period of time, Scrum Master like try to possess another ways of power. So like an expert or whatever.
Actually, what we're seeing in situational leadership is not really a change of powers. That's I mean, all the time it's the referent and expert power, at least in situational leadership, that's at least promoted there. But when a team or a person is still very young and inexperienced at what they're doing, it's our expert as a leader, our expertship, yeah, as a leader, our experience and our capability to lead in that referent type of way. So being a charismatic leader, it's something that justifies the fact that we are delegating or we are helping or we're coaching on or we are kind of even micromanaging, yeah, depending on the situation. And again, it's both the referent and expert power, because an expert might micromanage. Someone who is a charismatic leader might micromanage, especially in times of crisis. It's completely justified. Those are the methods that should be used in that situation. It's about not overusing them and not underusing them in a given situation. Yeah? So for situational leadership, it's still the referent and expert power. There might be legitimate, but again, that depends on the culture.
Then if you like allow second question, when you enter a new team with already a set of informal leaders, like, and Scrum Master probably will not possess expert power in such case.
Why would not possess? They are an expert in Scrum.
There was a difference between expert power and trust between the team and the newly arrived Scrum Master over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be built, because if it comes to rewarding coercive and legitimate power, this is something that's visible at an instant. You don't need to build it. But to exhibit referent and expert power, you need to show yourself. You need to let yourself be known. Yeah. So it takes time. That's why in large organizations, legitimate power is so important. And that's why Scrum Masters have a certain level of seniority in that organization. They are sometimes like consultants, internal consultants, or somebody that's reporting directly to the CIO. That's because that legitimate power is something that's visible at an instant. You don't need to build your power. And because of that, you can talk to somebody that you don't know from the same organization on the same level. Yeah, you're instantly becoming a partner for a conversation. So a legitimate power has its use in large organizations, even for Scrum Masters. The question is, what type of legitimate power? How are you going to use it? How are you going to exhibit? Because there are actually even subforms of legitimate power, and you can use some of them to make Scrum Masters more powerful in your organization, but not in a way that they are going to manage your people, but in a way that they are actually going to do their job better. At Big Bangs, it didn't work. Of course, at Big Bangs, nothing works. And you're right, David, the Scrum Master police can be coercive in weaponizing Scrum values. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, perceived power and true power. Yeah, that's actually there is actually the difference between the referent and legitimate, because the referent power is that natural leadership, and sometimes in a group, and actually in lots of groups, what happens is that if there's that someone who is that referent, who is that referent leader, so there's that someone who is that charismatic leader, they try to legitimize their power by giving them a status. Yeah. And in some organizations, that's absolutely okay. But in some of those organizations, what happens is that legitimate power starts to cloud over that charisma. Yeah, it also might happen. So knowing and understanding your culture and your organization is so important, not to kill the natural leaders that you have in your organization, because legitimate power can kill leaders. Sorry, that conversation in chat is just pure gold.
Yep, sorry, Andrei just knows something about my previous background.
Don't be sorry. This is beautiful. This is the way we should approach that.
Afterwards, we will turn off the recording, and I will tell one more similar story, not for YouTube.
Does it contain the NDA clause? Or?
No. Just in November 2019, I was in New York in the meetup, last meetup in the evening of one of the Big Four consultancy office. And the rest part of this I will tell you after we will turn off the recording. And I hope it will be a great motivation for you who are looking at us on YouTube to come in person to our meetups, yep. Not just sitting and wait for another YouTube post.
Just one question, Artem. Was it Craig?
Let's switch off the recording now.
Was it Craig?
I can't hear you.
Okay, I got it.
I wait till you stop the recording. Yep.
First donation, then story. Yeah, I will send the link.
Okay. I think it's a good way to end on a very positive note. Thank you very much, guys. It was fun. Thank you very much.
And girls.
Valuable. By guys, I mean everybody. But thank you for highlighting it. Yep. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for participating here. And see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we have awesome speakers as well. Different topics. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about Kanban.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
And also they introduced, like Kanban University introduced that courses for Ukrainians are free. Not sure which exactly, but yeah.
Camden University is also our partner who made a very generous donation. So we thank them a lot. And now we thank Kate. Kate, it was awesome.
Yeah.
All the discussions. Yay.
When you're clapping your hands, you should turn on microphone. It will be totally different experience. Just try it.
Sure.
And compare.
Okay. See ya. Bye-bye.
All right. See ya.